You're watching Talking Who's.
Episode 32.
It is episode 32.
Episode 30. Bloody hell.
Although I have cheated slightly when I put out the videos of like the Torchwood interviews from Expo.
Oh, you
they counted those as episodes as well.
Welcome then to episode 32.
10, 10, 10, and 2.
Of those video of
Talking Who.
From those video guys.
From those video guys, indeed. And we've just slightly out of focus.
And here we are. We're going to spend the next hour doing nothing but talking about Doctor Who. Of course, you can follow us both on Twitter. I'm Sean Harry.
And I'm Elazar Cabrera.
And I'm Sean Harry, so it's very easy. My Twitter tag is at Sean Harry, whereas yours is Ellie Cab.
Which is the first three letters of my first name and the first three letters of my second name.
You sound like a cab company.
Well, Ellie Cab. Actually, it comes from my dad.
Right.
That's why I chose that particular, because my dad is Ben Cabrera, and he's known professionally as Ben Cab.
Oh.
So I thought, hey, I'll do my Twitter name as Ellie Cab in tribute.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, welcome to Talking Who.
And happy 4th of July.
To all our American fans who probably aren't watching, but they'll catch up later.
Yes, and we're going to give this a bit of an American theme to it, because we're going to look at two stories this week. The Daleks in Manhattan.
Indeed.
Which some people actually felt should have been called the Daleks Take Manhattan.
Yeah.
And the Gunfighters.
Doctor Who and the Gunfighters, indeed.
Yes. So, but you can follow us we're on YouTube. We have conquered every aspect of the internet, even Google+.
We don't have a Pinterest board yet.
What? Okay, right. You can get us on YouTube.
YouTube.com/Those Video Guys TV. Subscribe, please.
And also we've got a website.
Yes, that's talkingwho.com.
And we're on Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook.
Actually, that's completely wrong on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Those Video Guys.
Okay.
So I need to change that.
We're on Twitter.
Twitter.com Talking Who, @Talking Who. Very simple.
Blip TV.
Yep, and that is Talking Who.
Wasn't there a Blip TV in Max Headroom?
There might have been, actually. Yeah, that sounds quite familiar. Maybe that's where they got their name from.
G+, Google+, the hangout for Google's employees.
G+.to/Talk Who.
And also we're on iTunes.
Yeah, do a search for Doctor Who Talking Who, and that is our video podcast bite-sized episods.
Bite-sized, little chunks.
Doctor Who Confan says good evening.
Good evening,
Andy Oliver says hello.
Good evening, Andy.
Goth Allwood says good evening. T Chalky says hello. We're going to be seeing T Chalky later in one of our videos, by the way. Barry Aldridge says hello again, and so does the Gallifrey Times.
Hello.
So,
well, if we've got the Times on Gallifrey, do they have the Gallifrey Sun?
Do they have the Gallifrey Sun? I don't know.
With a page 3 stunner. Should be a Shabugan.
I'm sure Leela just gets it every week. Because they've probably not seen anyone so undressed on Gallifrey. Actually, could they? You can tweet along with the hashtag DWBar, or you can just tweet directly at Talking Who.
Yes.
We have iPads, or a iPad, with which to follow your tweets. And we'll have it right up here. And I can see we may have even received a tweet already.
Oh.
It's Barry who has been sharing the video link to this YouTube broadcast. So if everyone who's watching right now also shares the link, hopefully we can get more people in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so tweet along with DWBar, or just go tweet directly at Talking Who. So anyway, news, obviously the sad news.
Caroline John
since our last show,
yeah.
Very underrated companion, don't you think? I mean,
well,
only four episodes to judge from, but
more than 4 episodes.
Well, four stories
to
yes,
judge from, and it was actually one of those seasons where, to keep production costs down, they extended the length of certain stories. So you had 3 7-part stories, and On Inferno, that worked brilliantly because they did this whole parallel universe story, and it made for a much better story. I could get into that, and they actually, oddly enough, managed to make 7 episodes work on the Silurians.
Yeah.
Ambassadors of Death is not a story I'm a fan of. They've just announced, I don't know if you've seen also this week, they've announced that Ambassadors of Death has now been fully recolorized.
Fantastic news.
And will be out on DVD next year.
Looking forward to
Caroline,
that.
she only had 4 stories, and Caroline John was a bit of a flash forward in a way, because it was the first attempt, real proper attempt, to do a female companion who was like the Doctor's equal, and a strong female feminist companion. And this was obviously something which was very much on Barry Letz's mind, because who was the producer at the time, a few years later they brought in Sarah Jane Smith. But this was 1970, and especially John Pertwee, but a lot of people actually reacted badly to this idea of this companion, and actually said writing-wise it gave them difficulty, because what they needed was a companion who really didn't know anything. So they could turn around to the Doctor and say, I don't understand this, and the Doctor would explain to them, and of course be explained to the viewers. But with Liz Shaw, you had a companion who knew everything, so it kind of created.
But that's also a double-edged sword, because I mean we're reviewing the Gunfighters later, but actually on one of the fantastic documentaries on that, they talk about the character of Katarina, who actually they did have that problem where they said, well, actually we've got now a character from Trojan times who doesn't know anything at all about science.
They managed to get around it with Jamie McCrimmon.
But I think they sort of glossed over stuff slightly with Jamie.
I think. And what they replaced Liz Shaw with Joe Grant, who is probably my least favourite companion personally. But I think having a dumb companion who, it makes sense story-wise, because then that way that companion can be explained what's going on by the Doctor. But I think you then have a situation where you just have this stupid person travelling with the Doctor. And I think what worked much better was when you had a situation like they had with Ace. Or you've had more recently with companions such as Amy Pond or with Rose Tyler, where you get the impression the Doctor's trying to mentor them and to teach them, and that actually I think works out a lot better. And I felt with Ace they got it absolutely perfectly right, whereas with Joe Grant you just had this girl who just looked like a dimwit.
Do you think Liz Shaw really sort of works retrospectively, because we've watched Doctor Who.
When you watch Liz Shaw now, I don't
as
see
opposed
what
to at the time.
When I watch Liz Shaw now, but you have to put things in context of the time, and it's a bit like, you know, Gene Roddenberry was trying to be feminist in Star Trek, but he still had the girls walking around in mini skirts up to there. You're talking about different attitudes, and you know, is this? Have you seen the film Prometheus?
Not yet, no.
A lot of the fans are kind of like curious that the main character in that is called Liz Shaw.
Dr. Elizabeth Shaw, yes. Barry Aldridge says, actually, Ambassador of Death DVD is coming out 1st of October.
Oh, is it? They've announced the dates? Because when I read up on it, they hadn't announced the dates. But yeah, and it's going to be all in. They've restored it all to colour and everything. I was never very hot on. And how many races live on Mars?
Well,
you've got the Ambassadors of Death come from Mars.
Yeah.
You've got some water creature from the water of Mars lives on Mars. You've got the Fendal come from Mars, and of course the Ice Warriors.
And presumably they've all sort of had to ignore the pyramid on Mars.
Oh,
as well.
Of course, there's this giant pyramid on there that was put there by the Osirans.
Yes, Mars. Mars is just one of those planets that just sounds so good to have in a script, doesn't it?
It's going to be interesting to see when they bring the Ice Warriors back, if they're going to come from Mars, or whether they'll just have them as this reptilian race that turns up.
Well, I mean, the 10th Doctor does refer to them, of course,
just refers
in the water of Mars.
But he first mentions the water of Mars, and he actually makes a reference, not... the fans assumed it was to the Ice Warriors, but I think he says to Freema's character at one point, she says, "Is that a Martian?" And he goes, "No, that's not a Martian. Martians look completely different." Or something.
I mean, of course,
lines.
By
the time you get to the Curse of Peladon and the Monster of Peladon,
you're talking the far future as well.
Yes, but there's an inference in those stories that the Ice Warriors have left mark, because a lot
Have
of the
left
plot
marks, yeah.
line, a lot of the plot line of the first Ice Warriors and of the Seeds of Death is that Mars is dying and the Ice Warriors need to find a new home, and Earth is a potential planet for them to go for.
I mean,
And when
Seeds of Death and Paladin Stories are actually set in Earth future.
Yes, but Seeds of Death is set in like 100 years, 50 to 100 years in the future, whereas Monster and Peladon's set several centuries, even 1,000 or so years in the future, and it's very clear in that the Ice Warriors aren't Martians anymore. They've colonised other worlds more suitable for them now. And that's why they can suddenly be at peace with humans, because they don't need our planet.
The waters of Mars isn't set that far in the future, I
Yeah.
don't think. It's maybe like 20 or 30 years I think, in the
Yes.
future. So there's obviously a gap between the waters of Mars and the Ice Warriors somehow being buried,
Yeah.
and them actually then coming out. And but anyway, it's Doctor Who timeline continuity, which
Well,
never makes any sense anyway.
How many times has Doctor Who turned up at Atlantis?
Well, 3 times, isn't
Yes,
it? Yes.
yes.
So you can never.
I had that chat with Matt about that with Matt Smith, because he wants to go to Atlantis.
Doctor Who Con fan says, "What about Zoe? She had brains and was
I
sassy.
loved-
Plus, she rocked a catsuit."
I loved Zoe. I think Wendy Padbury back in the 60s is probably, in my opinion, the all-time sexiest companion.
Yeah.
I loved the character of Zoe, but she was still very different. Liz Shaw was serious, whereas Zoe, you can see the through line from Zoe to Liz Shaw. But Zoe she's brainy, she's intelligent, she's overly sexy. She gets chased by Ice Warriors and, whatever other monster of the week. She wears outrageously silly costumes, and she's silly, and her and Jamie get into all kinds of trouble together. And she's very much still the prototype type of companion who screams and gets into trouble. Whereas Liz Shaw, if she got attacked by a monster, you couldn't see her screaming, and she would probably be like, where instead of screaming or running away, she'd be thinking, where is this creature comes from?
Yes,
Can I
sure.
communicate with it? Is it hostile? Is it friendly? Does it have a culture? She'd be thinking along those lines. Whereas Zoe would scream and run away in a very sexy way.
Well, according to iCrofty,
and she's the only thing worth watching, the Crotons. I watched that this week on
I didn't
DVD.
watch it yet.
Oh,
wow.
They threw away Evil of the Daleks, and they kept the Crotons. There is no justice. I mean, is there somebody we can go to and say, if we hand you back the Crotons and the Dominators, could we have Power of the Daleks and Evil of the Daleks?
iCrofty says Doctor Who is so crap. Well, I think you're watching the wrong show then, iCrofty.
Bye. Go away.
And apparently we're fags. We should get a life. Okay,
that's
right.
That's what you call. that is what Charlie Sheen would call, quote,
troll.
A troll.
Doctor Who Con fans, obviously it's worth watching the Crotons because of the marvellous Patrick Troughton. And Doctor Who Ellis says, hello guys, sorry I'm late, loving the Fez Sean.
Yeah.
What else we got? And Blue Box 99 Jenny, she's saying she's having problems with YouTube, so will watch us later. So, the other news is that we heard that Madame Vastra and Jenny are back in a new series.
Yes.
Which we never got a hint of at all.
What? I was sitting in the green room and Matt Smith walks in and he sees he sees Caitlin and Neve in the green room and he goes, aren't I seeing you two in 2 weeks' time? And I went, isn't that a spoiler? And I was told I had to shut up, and then it's kind of like gone public now.
Yep, there we go. Well, the I think it's the beady eyes and cameras of the fans who turn up.
I think the fans knew already the way those characters were introduced. You don't introduce the way they're introduced was set up for further appearances.
Yes, exactly. Because they've been taken out of their time as well.
Yeah, there was something. There was something about them. They're an action pair, and there's something about the way they were created. Something that's going to appeal very much to what fans are into at the moment. What could be better than a Victorian steampunk lesbian lizard and sexy hot chick with samurai swords fighting evil? I mean, to be quite frank, it screams more than anything that has happened in Moffat's 2 years, they had, 20 minutes of screen time, which spent the entire time screaming spin-off series.
So anyway, well, speaking about the 11th hour, we had a fantastic convention.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Do you want to give an insight into what it was like for you as an organiser for putting together the...
Well, I've got to say, Matt Smith, I've been running events for 15 years. I've run over 60 events. Matt Smith's one of the nicest people I've worked with. Incredibly professional, super nice, loves his fans, loves fans of the Doctor Who. He's amazingly humbled that he's part of such a franchise, and he has no ego about, he doesn't view himself as like, I'm the star of Doctor Who. He views himself as part of this show that has gone on for nearly 50 years. He kept on quizzing me about what plans I had for the 50th anniversary. And I had to say, it was a joy to see the way he behaved with young kids at the convention. I mean, he seems
to really, really enjoy it.
Yes, he really does. When you've got like a 7-year-old boy come, he would turn into the Doctor and he would give them such attention. And there was, we had nearly 100 young kids at the event, and I think all of them are going to remember for decades to come the day they met their Doctor.
Indeed, absolutely. The Gallifrey Times, who, by the way, the Gallifrey Times has a news website called the gallifreytimes.co.uk. Congratulations on organising a fantastic event.
Yeah.
And Doctor Who Ella says, cannot wait to see Vastra and Jenny back. Love them in A Good Man Goes to War, and they are superb characters.
Well, the funny thing is that Neve McIntosh, who plays Madame Vastra, was actually, after Matt Smith, probably the big surprise hit of the convention.
Absolutely,
the fans absolutely adored her.
And she really got into the spirit of it.
Hanging out at the event and
dancing at
hanging
discos,
out in the bar, going to the disco, everything. She became a huge hit with the fans. And I think that if they hadn't been bringing Madame Vastra back, I think that the fans would have been on to Stephen Moffat saying, we want her back after this weekend.
Absolutely. Anyway, Talking Who was backstage. We did record an interview with Neve McIntosh.
Yeah, you also managed to speak to, Francis Barber?
Mark Shepherd.
Did you speak to Christina Chong, I thought?
And Christina Chong,
yes.
Absolutely. So we've actually already put up our teaser trailer for the Francis Barber one. Yeah. Francis Barber 1 will be online tomorrow on our YouTube channel on the 5th of July. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you get that when it goes live.
And for those of you who were at the 11th hour, and for those of you who weren't, we've got a video up of it on YouTube at the moment.
That's right,
that. Yep. It's an 11-minute overview of the event, clips from the autograph sessions, from the photo sessions, from the discos. We've got some quotes on there from Christina Chong, from Neve McIntosh, from Catherine Stewart, and we got quotes on there from Matt Smith as well, who had a great time at the event. It's an 11-minute trailer. Just go on YouTube, youtube.com/Sean Harry, my YouTube page named after me. Or alternatively, it's
embedded on the Talking Who website as well.
And all you got to do is just type in on YouTube search engine Starfury Matt Smith, and that'll take you straight to it. And for those of you who are at the 11th hour, you'll probably already know. And for those of you who weren't, who are watching this, let you know, we've got a follow-up convention, midnight. Because, of course, when you follow on from the 11th hour, the next thing is midnight.
Indeed.
And but, of course, midnight's named after a David Tennant episode. So, hardly surprising, we have David Tennant along for this event. David Tennant and, at her first ever convention, Billie Piper.
Which is very, very exciting.
Yes. And what I'm finding more exciting is the rate ticket sale. We sold 550 tickets.
Get your tickets in early if you're thinking about this.
We sold 550 tickets for the 11th hour. We've already sold over 400 tickets in 10 days for midnight.
If you're thinking about it, just do it. And especially if you want gold, because those will...
I think we've got like 10 gold tickets left.
Only 10 gold tickets left.
But got Billie Piper, we've got David Tennant, we've got Kai Owen from Torchwood, who's known as a bit of a party animal, great convention guest as well. We've got Phil Ford, who wrote, we were talking about it before, he wrote the episode The Waters of Mars.
Absolutely.
He wrote an episode from season 2 of Torchwood.
Yeah.
And he wrote nearly all the episodes of the Sarah Jane Adventures, which he produced the series as well.
That's going to be a great panel, I think, with him, especially talking about all the fans who are obviously missing Elizabeth Sladen. Will be a little one.
Well, I've actually had quite a few requests from people tweeting me and emailing me saying, am I going to do something to do with Sarah Jane Adventures? I have to say, and I can say this truthfully and honestly, if Liz Sladen would still be here, it would have been a dream for me to get her to an event.
Yeah.
And with an event that's around David Tennant, she actually probably would have been the first people I would have invited to. But I've had a lot of requests for a bit more of a Sarah Jane element to the event, so I'll have to look into that. We've also got Gary Russell, who was he edited Doctor Who magazine. He script edited and wrote for Big Finish Productions. He script edited on Doctor Who the TV series itself, and is seen as one of the foremost Doctor Who experts. And we've also got Tony Lee and Jim Swallow coming back. We were supposed to have Kai Owen, but I had to change the dates, to accommodate the other guests, and unfortunately he's in Panto. And I got confirmed that this evening by his manager, which is a shame because Kai's a super nice guy and a really good guest at events. But he's somebody I really want to work with at a Starfury event, so we'll have him at a future event. But I'll try and get another Torchwood guest to replace Kai on that.
Cool. Good. William Sylvie, I love Transformers and I love that you talk about it.
Transformers?
I think you're watching the wrong show, mate. Patton Frodo says, "Come on, guys, a shout out for the American fans."
Well, we did.
We did say Happy 4th of July.
And any second now, we're going to start looking at the Gunfighters, and then we're going to start looking at the Daleks Take Manhattan. When we've done that, because it's the 4th of July.
Well, anyway, to introduce.
Now, actually, 4th of July, that would be an interesting period if the Doctor, I don't think he's ever done a story gone back to the
Civil War
or the War of Independence. Either period. I think that would be an interesting. I think the closest he's got to the Civil War was the War Games.
Yeah.
The Civil War was one of the, and there was this barn in the Civil War they kept on going back to.
That's right. And as far as the 18th century, when this American War of Independence happened. I think it was the French Revolution was happening sort of almost around the same time. Yeah. And of course they did go to see that in the Reign of Terror, which we're going to be seeing very soon on DVD.
French Revolution happened just after the American Revolution, and they actually say one of the reasons why the French Revolution happened was because the French government gave so much money to the American revolutionaries that their people were starving, and they precipitated their own revolution by helping the American Revolution.
So anyway, to introduce our American theme, we're gonna hand over to Barry Aldridge, who's going to tell us about his top 5 American characters in Doctor Who, not actors, characters.
Hello, Talking Who. It's Barry Aldridge here, and happy 4th of July, to the Americans edition of Talking Who. Yes, I'm here to present my top 5 favourite American characters in Doctor Who, from the classic series and the new series. I was able to find one from the classic series, which is really, really cool, and a lot, though, from the new series. So these are just my thoughts and opinions on American characters within Doctor Who. So here we are, here is my top 5. And at number 5 it is, I've got to give it to President Richard Nixon. Now I know some of you are probably thinking, what? Why Nixon? I mean, Nixon wasn't in some people's eyes, wasn't a liked president. But I did like the Richard Nixon in Doctor Who though, really. Somebody there who played his role really well, and then when he found out the truth about Canton, Delaware, near the end, I think his reaction was just absolutely was priceless. Like, he just didn't know how to take it. Which, back then, though, that's what it was, though. But I did like the Richard Nixon character. He was someone, who was actually kind of like a little bit funny. And you can actually go, okay, there was little quirky bits in there. That's one of the reasons why I liked the Richard Nixon character. Simple as that. There was little quirkiness. I don't know why, but, I really did like the Richard Nixon character in this one. And at number 4, Frank, played by Andrew Garfield, who is in fact Spider-Man in the new Spider-Man films. What I liked about the Frank character from the Daleks in Manhattan and the Evolution of the Daleks was someone who was very, very sort of shy though. He looked up to Solomon, which was a really, really spoken character in that. But Frank, yeah, was someone there who really felt like, yeah, that he was someone there who could actually make a difference there. And, you know, he was willing to protect people in that. And, you know, he was kind of like a little mushy sort of character. But I really liked how he actually played it. And I really liked the character of Frank. I think Frank was very, very suited in that. You know, you can actually believe, yeah, that he was someone there who could actually become a leader at some point. He was raised under Solomon in that. So I really did like him in that. And I feel like you could sort of see that. You couldn't see that back then, though, with Andrew Garfield becoming something. But, you know, wow. I mean, looking back on it, it was a good performance, definitely from him. 3. Captain Hopper from the Tomb of the Cybermen. Now, it's quite surprising, and I really dig back deep into Doctor Who and that to see if there was any American characters in classic Doctor Who. And I remember Captain Hopper, though, from the Tomb of the Cybermen. He was someone there that was kind of like really impatient and really wanted to get things done in that. And I really liked this character as well. Someone who was tough and brooding in that and willing to go head on in that and was willing to guard the ship and that. Someone there that was kind of like a bit of an arrogant character, but, you know, I kind of liked him, really. I mean, like a lot of the characters in that story, I really liked, though, in the Tomb of the Cybermen. This one, though, he really showed himself, really. And he was honest about anything. If there was something he didn't like or didn't understand, he'd go, no, whatever. Or just, let's go, whatever. I don't want to know any more about it or whatever. But yeah, he was a very, very good sort of character. Very, very likeable. To me, he was likeable. While some other people would go, nah. I don't know, really. At number 2, Hugh Quershi played the character of Solomon. Now, Solomon actually gets killed, though, in Evolution of the Daleks. But what I liked about his character was he was strong. He was someone that was willing, though, to believe, to fight back against the system, to try and deal with what was going on in that. He didn't realise what was actually going on in that. To try and help people who come from all over the country in that. Very, very spoken. Very, very well done. Hugh Quershi actually adds a quality to it. I mean, while the accent isn't really the strong point, I mean, he is actually from Ghana and he isn't an American, but I really liked how he brought the role and presence to it, and I really did like that character. And when he got killed by the Daleks during Evolution of the Daleks, it was like an oh my god fact. It was like, no way. Absolutely no way. And I really did like the character there. And at number 1, Canton, Delaware, from The Impossible Astronaut and The Day of the Moon, from the Matt Smith era. I gotta say though, really, I really loved the character in that. Really, someone here who got sacked though from the FBI, and you know, then gets hired by the president because of the mysterious phone calls from this little girl or something like that. So, and then the Doctor actually helps out. What I liked about it is the guy who plays the character, his younger self, his older self is played by his dad. I think that is a wonderful bit of casting, though, really. It was something that one of my YouTube friends told me, and I think that's an absolutely brilliant concept, I have to say. Really liked it. And the character was very, very likeable. I really did like his character. Very, very well, though, really. I think it was such a brilliant character, that Canton, Delaware character. I really did enjoy it. And also, yeah, you know, you really did believe his performance. It was just absolutely, it was really cool. And that's it though, guys. That's my top 5 American characters within Doctor Who. Now, before I go, I want to do something a little bit at the end. Normally I'd add something a little bit at the end, like a little review or some sort of with Doctor Who. But I actually asked Elsnar's permission for this, and he said, yeah, go for this. As a lot of Doctor Who fans know, earlier on last month, Caroline John, who is best known to play Liz Shaw in Doctor who was John Pertwee's first companion in his first season for 4 stories, passed away though from cancer. And it was a real shock though when a lot of the Doctor Who fandom did, and a lot of Doctor Who fans found a real shock, because it's like losing part of a sort of a family though, really, when you're part of that Doctor Who world. What can I say about Caroline John? I mean, I first watched her first ever story, Spearhead from Space, when I was a young kid, watching it on VHS, and the cover still haunts me to this day a little bit. I really did like the cover, and I still like the cover to this day though, really. It's really cool. I never ever met Caroline John, but when I first saw her in the role, I thought she was really good. She was someone that took it very, very seriously. The character that she played was totally different from a lot of companions back then and now. She was someone that was totally equal though with the Doctor. You know, if the Doctor had said something and you know, she would actually go against him in that, and then eventually, you know, she would give in. But however, she would put up a challenge though to the Doctor, because she was a scientist who believes in certain things or whatever, try and find the right sort of solution in that. And I really loved her character, and it was such a shame though she only appeared in 4 stories, which were in Spearhead from Space, Doctor Who and the Silurians, The Ambassadors of Death, and Inferno. And I felt like she did a wonderful performance in all of them. And my condolences go to Jeffrey Beavers, who is a husband who played the Master in The Keeper of Traken, you know, and the family as well, and friends and that. Such a sad loss though, really. She was a wonderful companion, a lot of people's eyes, an underrated companion, which I really do agree with. Could have had a bit, I think, yeah, could have had an extra season on Doctor Who, but as you know, things change now, and different producers want different ideas and that, but you know, fair dues. But however though, she was able to come back for the 5 Doctors for one more time, but every time that she came onto the show, she brought a brilliant presence though to the role. And Caroline John, aka Liz Shaw, you will be missed. Rest in peace. From the Doctor Who fandom, you will be missed. And everyone, thanks for watching my latest top 5, and speak to you next time. Peace. Hello.
Well, there we go. Thank you very much, Barry.
Thanks, Barry.
Quite a lot of tweets have come in. 2010_11 says, excellent comments about Matt Smith and the kids. They are the ones that really matter.
Yep.
Total Nerdy Bird says, you have to have a fabulous 50th anniversary convention next year, Sean, as it's her 40th birthday next year. So she insists.
Okay, does she want to pay for it? I'll try and do something.
And Bluebox99 says, evening, Sean and Elazar. Love the 11th hour, and thanks for a real weekend at the con. Cool. And there's lots of action there, and we've still got a Transformers conversation going on in the YouTube chat.
My favourite Transformer is Megan Fox.
What did she transform into?
I have no. She could transform into what
she could transform out of clothes quite quickly.
You know, yes. Oh, if only. And then there was that blonde Australian bird in the first one as well, who apparently didn't get on with Michael Bay, so she wasn't
Rachel
in the second
Taylor.
one. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Who became a Charlie's Angel, which was
like 2 episodes.
Which was probably
cancelled because nobody watched it.
Cool. Okay, so let's move on to our first review.
So we've got our reviews. We're going to be looking at 2 Doctor Who stories. We're going to look at one of the most recent new Doctor Who stories, and very much a very classic black and white story. But the theme that links them both together is this is Doctor Who in America.
Doctor Who in America. Absolutely.
Yes.
So here is the
Daleks Take Manhattan.
Is the Statue of Liberty? I've always wanted to go to New York.
It's the depression, sweetie. Your heart might break, but the show goes on.
Hooverville mystery deepens.
Arm yourselves! Come on! Who are we working for?
Behold your masters.
What do you mean, creatures?
What the hell was that?
Doctor?
Hands in the air and no funny business.
Where's Martha?
It's insane! It's inhuman!
They always survive when I lose everything.
Before I'm watching this again, I'd actually almost forgotten that Andrew Garfield had been wasted as a sort of B character in this, because obviously he's such a huge star now. You kind of forget that actually he was just a jobbing British actor on British television for a while.
This season was the season where they had Carey Mulligan.
Carey Mulligan is absolutely
on the show.
I know.
So I mean, you know, she's like one of the biggest British stars now.
David Tennant thought he would be in Hollywood by now, but it's all the people who did like guest roles who are all now the biggest stars.
Yeah, I don't think you'll be seeing Carey Mulligan at midnight or any other Starfury event anytime soon.
That's a shame, isn't it?
You know, for me, right now the Daleks Take Manhattan.
Daleks in Manhattan.
Daleks in Manhattan. Now, right up until this point, classic, a new Doctor Who had really got the Daleks right, and they'd really, each time the Daleks had turned up, they built it up as this really powerful menace, and really had the Daleks as very scary. They'd had like 3 Dalek stories,
but also doing Daleks with special effects they hadn't been able to do before.
Yes, really,
and so therefore make them more impressive.
Yes. And But not just that. In the previous story, when the Daleks faced off against the Cybermen, they had introduced the cult of Skaro with Dalek Sec, and these 4 Daleks had been able to take on the world and an entire army of hundreds of thousands of Cybermen and come out on top. They were like, they absolutely epitomised what made Daleks cool. And Dalek Sec, I felt, was a fantastic character. And then suddenly this 2-parter comes along, and I view it as one of the worst Tennant stories. I thought the whole thing was a mess. And from a story perspective, but on the flip side, from a production perspective, it's an absolute triumph. I mean, the special effects, I'm not talking about special effects like in the Daleks or lasers or spaceships, but of recreating Manhattan and New York
in Wales,
the 1930s. They do an amazing job. And this is what you would expect from an A-grade BBC period drama, and it really does show that the BBC can. But the special effects in recreating, Manhattan and the Statue of Liberty and the ships in the harbour and everything like that, they just did a really fantastic job of getting a feel of the 1930s America. But I felt the story was the idea of it, of examining the difference in personality and character between Daleks and humans, and the idea of a human factor and a Dalek factor had already been touched upon in Evil of the Daleks, a Patrick Troughton story. But I just felt the Daleks were just not a threat in this story. And even worse for me, there were certain historical things which rubbed me up the wrong, especially, in Human Nature, they touch upon race issues and the fact that Freema Agyeman, her character is the Doctor's maidservant, and there's certain derogatory comments here. In this 1930s America, from America, which only about 15 years earlier you had A Birth of a Nation as the number 1 box office film at the cinema, you've got a black character leading them as in charge of the homeless.
They did try to explain it, saying that, well, this is Hooverville. This is where all the poor people go who have nothing, and somehow they're all on equal terms. And so he's managed to become the leader.
You want to know something? The fact is that would never have happened.
No, it would never.
It would
have happened,
absolutely never have happened. And I feel if you're gonna, in terms of I'm not saying, I'm going for historical accuracy, and I think certain things should be taught. When the film Red Tails came out, I was reading about what those soldiers went through in that those heroic flight airmen went through in the 1950s New York. And you've got a situation in the 30s New York where one of them is trying to push a black girl into a relationship with a white guy, which was the ultimate taboo. They deal actually with in The Impossible Astronaut, the idea of a male and male relationship in the 1960s being a huge taboo. But suddenly, earlier in the 1930s, an interracial relationship isn't seen as that would have been like a lynching offence in America. I said you had Birth of a Nation only a few years ago in the cinemas, and black civil rights didn't come up until even in the 60s. There were people were fighting and dying for it, and I just felt a bit. I felt that this had been whitewashed over quite.
It's BBC drama, family, children's
they dealt with it to
correctness.
An extent in Human Nature, so it almost makes me feel like the BBC was happy to deal with it when racism is a British issue. When it's an American issue, they don't want to lose American viewers or fans, which I felt kind of annoying. But that I felt annoying, but it didn't disrail the story. But I kind of felt that Dalek Sec, who had been such a fantastic character, and I really would have loved them to have kept him as a villain, by the cliffhanger of this story just became a joke.
It actually made no sense, really, because they've already established these new Daleks as being incredibly powerful Daleks, much more powerful than previous ones. Why would they just want to become a walking squid head? Because what can he do? He can't shoot anyone. He can't interface with it. It just
and
seems
as their
completely
leader,
pointless.
I think he would have been the last one to actually put himself through that process. But it just, I just really did not like this.
Well, it's Mother who says, I never understood the pigs. When the Daleks were so clever and powerful, why the pigs?
Do you know what I would love them to bring back on a Doctor Who story is
Robomen.
the Ogrons. No, the Ogrons.
Ogrons.
Because that to me made sense. If you're it's a bit like the Roman Empire or the British Empire. What was the main thing of the Roman Empire or the British Empire?
Yeah.
The Roman Empire, they never sent Romans to the front line. They sent their German or they sent their Spanish troops to the front line. And in the British Empire, who did we send to the front line?
Gurkhas.
The Scots or the Irish or the Gurkhas. When you've got an empire, and the Daleks, I always think, would not put themselves in the front line.
No.
They get, and the Ogrons seem perfect for the Daleks. A big, hulking, stupid race who
are happy
take
to fight,
orders
yes.
and are happy to fight. And I thought the Ogrons were, I'd love them to, and the pig creatures reminded me a bit of the Ogrons, but it seemed more like, oh, we need a monster in this for the kids, let's have some pigmen.
Yeah, it was kind of a ridiculous creature in the end to actually have in there. And again, it just seems like, well, yeah, what is the point? Why are the Daleks doing this? It just seems, it does. And you know what's a real shame is that, you have a female script writer on this one, and there are not enough women writing science fiction.
Yeah.
And
that said, though, one of the top writers in Hollywood is a female science fiction writer, and that's Jane Espenson.
Yep.
And I'm even trying to remember her name. The writer on Buffy the Vampire Slayer is now a head writer who created Point Pleasant, and now is doing Mad Men. There aren't enough. I've spoken to women, right, and put it this way: out of any job in the television or film industry, scriptwriter is the hardest one for women to break into.
Andy Oliver says, Daleks were not even needed in this episode, and the human Dalek, my goodness, what a cliche and pointless merchandising trick. Have we seen this hybrid again? Blog to Who is in our chat room today. Hello, Blog to Who.
Hello.
Nice to see you. Who was, of course, up on stage with us on the 11th hour.
Yes, he'll be back at midnight as well.
So, Gallifrey Times says, I enjoyed this episode, but it's been ages since I've watched it. And Doctor Who Ella says, it's felt like the Daleks just went, what the hell, let's get pigs as slaves and combine a human with a Dalek. Sounds like they were drunk. Drunk Daleks. And it was just... Yeah, it was it's a real shame because it's such a great setting.
But also, what was frustrating
fantastic
about it is, with the exception of this story,
and Andrew Garfield wasted as just a bit part character.
But every time the Daleks have turned up on New Doctor Who, it's been an event. It's been like, and this was the one time I felt the Daleks turned up. And it was like,
it's like wasted. You said, we just have to have a Dalek story.
Yes.
Well, you know what? If you don't have a good idea for a Dalek story,
then don't
do it. Why?
And I also felt Russell T Davies had this real annoying habit of creating interesting villains and then killing them off almost immediately. So I do think it's great for the Doctor to have a gallery of villains to bring back.
Yeah.
I felt Lady Cassandra was a great villain, and then they killed her off in her second appearance. And again, Dalek Sec was a great villain, and they killed him off in his second appearance. And I think Russell T Davies shouldn't have been killing these villains off. He should have been establishing them so they were part of the Doctor Who mythos to bring back in the future.
And actually, a Dalek Sec rogue element within the Daleks as a continuing story.
That's in terms of rogue elements, it's been done before. It got very boring by the end of Sylvester McCoy's
because a Dalek with a person, you're sort of halfway between having a new Davros, really, I suppose.
But writers often say that's why they needed Davros or a character like Dalek Sec, because you need like a spokesperson to interact with the Doctor and to come out with the dialogue and the exposition. And just mindless drones, it becomes very difficult to create any kind of like dialogue of menace with.
Gallifrey Times says, I think this episode would have been better with Cybermen.
Well, that was the actual thing which got me about this.
It does make more sense.
And it does annoy me sometimes this with writers. I mean, I felt this happened at there was a classic Doctor Who story called Destiny of the Daleks, which again, I felt would have worked better with Cybermen. I always felt the thing about Daleks was they're supposed to be irrational. They're supposed to be emotional, but they have different emotions. They feel anger, aggression, self-loathing, hate. They've got negative emotions, which Davros has. He's cut out all the good emotions, the positive emotions like love and sympathy, and they can't empathise with people.
Yeah.
But I feel they almost get this sexual enjoyment out of killing people and out of destroying things and oppressing. And there's something about them, they don't make logical decisions. Whereas the Cybermen are very different. The Cybermen are very logical. They're supposed to do, because they've got computers in their brain. But you keep on sometimes having these stories, and this was a good example where you almost feel the writers has mistaken the Daleks for robots. And they go on about the Daleks being logical. But I thought, in the original story, the Daleks... and in Daleks' Invasion of Earth and stuff like that, the Daleks are anything but
They're not
logical.
No, indeed. Blogter says, do you think the reveal of Dalek Sect was ruined by the Radio Times cover?
Yes.
Totally. I think that was a total mistake by the
It's very
BBC.
interesting that in the 80s, the Radio Times wanted to put the new Cybermen from Earthshock on the cover, and John Nathan Turner said absolutely not. And they said this will help increase your ratings if we've got this on the cover. And he said, no, you give away the reveal. But I now feel, though, with new Doctor Who, every time there's a big thing happening on the show, you know what it is a week beforehand because it's on the cover of the Radio Times.
Yeah, no, they're just losing a lot of the mystery, I think. It is a shame. And if we'd seen how crap it was... If we hadn't seen how crap it was on Radio Times first, would it have been more of a shock? It probably would have been more of a shock. It probably wouldn't have changed feeling. But it is an example of a bad marketing decision.
I also do hate these aliens, which have an absolutely really over-the-top alien head. But the rest of the body is just completely like it is, like a normal human would be. He's got all these tentacles and all these scales and these eyes and everything. But then the rest of his body is just,
Bring back Andromeda, I say.
Yeah.
Are there any rumours of Andromeda? Wouldn't that be great? That is a proper alien. It's a proper alien. It's got 6 arms and a giant head.
And it's a hermaphrodite.
With a big eyeball. With those exactly. That is an alien. Okay, so...
Well, there were rumours... Matt Smith at my convention did hint at a return this season for the Ice Warriors.
Well, that's the great secret that hasn't been a secret for a while now. We shall see. I mean, there's been no official confirmation of Ice Warriors.
You want to know something? I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's coming soon.
But I think there's been enough hints that there's Ice Warriors coming.
But it's because effectively it is the last major classic monster. There are 1 or 2 minor ones they could potentially bring back, but this is the last one the fans have been waiting for. And Russell T Davies brought some. Well, it's almost every season. First season it was the Daleks. Second season it was the Cybermen. Third season the Master. 4th season it was the Sontar. No, it was Davros. And the 3rd season said the Master was also Sontarans as well. And the 5th season it was the Silurians. But we didn't get anybody. There was no. Except if you want to include the Nimon. But the Nimon's there with the Macra and the Autons. It was nice they brought them back, but it wasn't a class. And the Ice Warriors is the last major one, and on tenuous kind of like you kind of got the Mara and the Great Intelligence. Who now 50th anniversary. Next year's the 50th anniversary, and there's going to be a big special for the 50th anniversary. Do you think they would consider bringing back Omega?
Yes. Well, I suppose you can bring him back without having the whole Gallifrey.
Well, no, he was in
he's separate.
A parallel universe.
Sorry, T. Chalky says, "Did I mean Alpha Centauri when I was talking about Andromeda?" Yes, I did.
Alpha Centauri.
Alpha Centauri. Yes.
Now, the thing about Omega, you see, was he was the villain in the 10th anniversary story, and he was the villain in the 20th anniversary story. So it would be nice to bring him back because there wasn't a 30th or 40th anniversary story. So it'd be nice to bring him back for the 50th anniversary.
Yeah, I mean,
whether they do, would be another quest. Somebody here's waiting for the mandrels to come back. Thank you, Blog to Who. I love the mandrels, the way they attacked.
Doctor Who Con fans, the Ice Warriors were officially confirmed as redesigned and returning at the Doctor Who convention.
Right.
And there were modern pictures of the Ice Warriors at the official convention in Cardiff.
I haven't seen any of them. I thought they'd have been all over Facebook.
It's not been online. Yeah.
I thought people had taken pictures of them with their mobile phone cameras and got them all over Facebook and everywhere.
Well, if the Mandrels come back, then I think the Monoids need to come back as well.
The Monoids, I thought, people slagged them off. They kind of, except for their eyelids, suspiciously look like lips.
So, okay, well, that's our take on Daleks.
That's the Daleks in Manhattan, which
a bit
for
of a
me
thumbs
gets
down. Indeed.
Now, here we have the Gunfighters.
But before that,
all right.
On our American theme, It's Mother Who has done a very quick and short review of an American podcast this time.
Oh.
And this is the 2-minute Time Lord podcast reviewed by It's Mother Who.
Hello and welcome to Mother Who's podcast review. This month I've been listening to 2-Minute Time Lord, a veritable nugget of Whovian loveliness. As you may have gathered, Chip's podcasts, as a rule, are 2 minutes long. Worry not though, this wonderful American fits in a whole lot of Who in 2 minutes. He gives his informed opinion on episodes and DVD releases. He also has special episodes which are a little longer than 2 minutes. In one of these, he interviewed Harry and Leeson from Radio Rassilon, another Who podcast and one of my faves. Chip loves Who, and this is clear. His episode reviews are fair and concise, and out of the many I've listened to, I've only ever disagreed with one. But let's face it, he was never going to win me over with the argument that River Song should leave the show. She is my ultimate favourite. I love her so much. Even though I disagreed with him on this, I still found it interesting and funny listening. I asked some of 2-Minute Time Lord's listeners to tweet me a 3-word review of his show. Here are some of the replies. This podcast is perfect commuter iPod listening. It's short, snappy, and at times very funny. 2-Minute Time Lord's not scared of saying if he doesn't like an episode, and he says it in a really fair and concise manner. He doesn't just say he doesn't like something, he'll tell you why he doesn't like it and what he thinks could have been done better. I really like this. I think a lot of Whovians tend to just really gush about the show without really thinking about it. 2-Minute Time Lord gets a massive thumbs up from Mother Who.
Great, thank you, It's Mother Who.
Thank you, Mother Who.
And that video arrived in my inbox at the 11th hour, literally
right.
an hour before broadcast. I didn't even get to test it, so we played it out and it worked. Well done, It's Mother Who, for getting it to us just in the nick of time. I think it was Blue Box 99 says, bring back the Crinoid.
Crinoid was a good monster, that was, yes. That was there. Actually, I felt... during Barry Letts, there was this point in Barry Letts' period, about halfway. I mean, I don't know if you remember Colony in Space, but the aliens in that looked really naff. And then suddenly the next season, suddenly they started doing alien makeup really well. And you had the Ogrons, the Draconians, the Exelons, the Zygons, the Wirren, Crinoid, Sontarans, all these really cool monsters over this period, which I felt went up to about the Jaggeroth.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly they brought in the Pteroleptils and stuff, and suddenly the makeup went naff. But there was this period where it actually had some monsters where the design I felt looked fantastic and would work, the design would still hold up now.
One planet would be nice to go back to, just because what you could do now with the special effects would be something like the Web Planet.
Oh gosh, yes, that would be fascinating.
Even if you watch that episode, that's it's a 1960s black and white story.
Yeah.
You kind of watch it and think, God, to be a kid watching this with the moth people flying around,
and Martin Jarvis going, woo.
It must have actually been really impressive, like really cutting edge for its time. And I think it still holds up as a story.
That story nearly bankrupt Doctor Who.
But too expensive.
All the departments went overboard on it.
I mean, but it shows in the final edit.
Well, let's move on to our next review. And this is a William Hartnell story which almost certainly didn't bankrupt Doctor Who. It did actually get it close to being cancelled. Rumour has it had the lowest audience figures. That's actually not true. It actually had the lowest audience because what the BBC would do, they would do surveys of the audience and ask how many people enjoyed the show. And I think its appreciation figures were like at 35%.
Well, let's also remember though, back in the days of multi-channel TV, Doctor Who would be getting 10 or 11 million viewers.
But this got about 5 or 6 million viewers. This one, Doctor Who had been for its first 2 seasons a ratings juggernaut. And then suddenly at the 3rd season, they suddenly fell quite dramatically. But the Gunfighters is one story that for a long time was actually viewed as being... It's a bit like the Horns of Nimon. It was one of those ones which was viewed by fans as, it's one of the worst stories. It's Turkey, it's terrible. Then it's released on video. And fans actually get a chance to actually watch it properly. And people go... Actually, it's not that bad.
Well, we have a short clip from... Yeah. We don't have a trailer. Here's a clip.
Doc. What? Yes, what is it? Holiday. Holiday? Yes, I suppose so. Yes, you could call it that.
What is Harper? Seth Harper.
Oh, well, I'm very glad to know you, Mr. Harper. Yes, I suppose you brought a message from my friend.
What kind of a message, Doc? The boys are waiting for you at the store. They'd sure like to buy you a drink.
Oh, well, that's very sociable of them, but unfortunately I don't touch alcohol.
That's not what I heard, Doc. You play it your way. Look, we'll give you 5 minutes. If you ain't there, we'll come looking for you. Okay?
That's a very charming man, that man, Mr. Harper. Did you hear what he said?
Yeah, that's just Western hospitality, But if you forgive my saying so, you ain't dressed right for a party.
Oh, my dear man, I fail to see that my clothes are...
No, it ain't exactly your clothes.
Well, what is it, then?
You ain't wearing a gun.
Well, I should hope not. I certainly disapprove of violence.
Obviously, this is the pre-Time Lord Doctor, and so it's kind of always interesting to see him having real-world problems like a toothache. But yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, this is like, this is one of the stories I've heard it's really bad. I've never watched this one before because I didn't have the VHS, so this was the first time for me.
It's not like great,
but actually,
it's actually not bad. It's an okay story.
It's perfectly watchable, and if you're like us, a child of the 70s, and had Top Trumps, the Western one, you could just check off all the characters from the Top Trumps.
Well, I mean, watching this as a production is interesting because BBC would often do, period dramas and historical dramas, but Western is something which really we don't tackle in Britain, and this is very odd to see a British Western, and I think what they've done in terms of the costumes and the look on the sets is spot on. Bang on. They do a great, it doesn't feel like some cheap tacky Western knockoff. It looks really good. The big problem they get is when you actually get into the kind of like the street, it always feels like you're on a set. It actually reminded me a bit of the Star Trek episode when they went to the OK Corral, Spectre of the Gun. In fact, you always felt you were on a set. So when they're inside a house, it's fine. But as soon as they're walking the streets or something...
It's like one street.
You suddenly feel terribly confined. And
they seem to take 20 minutes to walk across the road because that's essentially all there is of the set.
But this is something, you've got to look at it. It was, as it was produced for the time. It was something produced in the 60s. But it is something that does... One thing I felt that held it back. Also, what also doesn't really work is Linda Barron, who would later appear as the pirate captain Rack in Enlightenment. and was also, our American viewers wouldn't know this, but our British viewers know this, she was a huge British star in a TV series called Open All Hours, which was one of the biggest sitcoms at the time for several years.
Yeah.
And when she actually appeared on Doctor Who as Captain Rack, that was a huge, big deal. She was a huge guest star to have. But she doesn't appear in this, but she sings a song in this, the Ballad of the OK Corral. And God, you just wish she would shut up after a while.
Okay, so yeah, the song, T-Chalk says they wish he hadn't even used it, but actually they didn't need to use it as so much.
Yeah,
it would have been fine for topping and tailing the episodes.
It's an interesting experiment. You can, and you've got to give it to them for trying. On a lot of drama shows,
absolutely.
They would not do something like this, and what they do is something experimental to have a sort of like a Western ballad sung between the scenes to set up the atmosphere, set up what's going on and the characters. It's a clever idea that unfortunately doesn't work. And by the time you've got, and especially, I don't know how it was when you were watching the episodes week by week, but watching them all together on DVD, once you're about halfway through it suddenly just becomes really annoying.
And of course the other thing is that you've Stephen and Doc Holliday's Woman also sing the song. So it's like you don't need the narration song when you've actually got it already as part of the story.
But I felt it was an interesting attempt, but it utterly fails on that. In terms of a drama itself, there's a lot of stories missing from season 3. This is one of the few complete stories from season 3. Virtually everything survives from Hartnell's first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
We're missing quite a lot from season 3, so it's great to have this as a complete story.
Stephen is a great companion.
You want to know something? I think Stephen was, for me, one of the best.
He never appears in any sort of top list of companions, but he really is one of the best companions.
I think one of the reasons he doesn't appear in the top lists of companions is because so many of his stories are missing. If the Dalek Master Plan still existed, if the Celestial Toymaker still existed, if the Savages still existed, there's very few of his stories that do still exist. And he was actually quite important on the set because he became very good friends with Bill Hartnell. And during this period he was quite unwell, and because of his illness would become very frustrated and was up. And he was actually somebody who could actually calm him down on set. So I thought he was a very good companion. So Dodo Chaplet, on the other hand, I feel she's probably one of the most poorly sketched out characters
obviously they were trying to recreate the Susan relationship and everything. Let's bring in a young girl. She looks kind of a bit similar to Susan.
It really didn't work,
but it doesn't work.
This is a great DVD because on this DVD there's also a documentary on it, End of the Line.
This is one of those must-watch documentaries for any Doctor Who fan.
And on every so many often you have a documentary on one of the DVDs which isn't about the story, it's more about a whole. And this is about season 3 of Doctor Who, and it's a whole thing about when Verity Lember left the show, and Dennis Spooner and David Whittaker left the show at the end of the 2nd season. A new production team, the problems they faced, about Bill Hartnell's illness and his problems on set, and how there was huge discussions on the BBC whether at the end of the 3rd season of Doctor Who to bring it to a natural end of its life or to reinvigorate it, which they did by adding Patrick Troughton. And I've got to say, this documentary is worth the price of the DVD alone.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it does give you really an insight into the decision to actually create the whole idea of regenerating the Doctor.
And it really gives you a good idea of how their choices of the direction of the show at the time and the stories
and the political infighting. Really, the producers of the Dalek Master Plan didn't actually want to do it. It was something that had already been set in stone, and so they had to do it. Yeah. But actually, it's, as far as people's memory, it's one of the greatest stories that unfortunately we can't even watch these days.
Well, there's 3 episodes, and I have to say I find it very frustrating because for me, the 3 surviving episodes of the Dalek Master Plan are my 3 favourite black and white episodes. But there's only those 3 survive, and I think they're great. I
recently listened to Dalek Master Plan on audio, and it is. You just listen to it and you just think...
You've got a fabulous villain in Navik Czech. I think that the Daleks themselves, the way they're presented, I think it must be a favourite story of Russell T Davies, because I feel the way the Daleks are in the Dalek Master Plan is the way they were presented in Christopher Eccleston's stories when they returned.
Yeah.
And that's a great one. But yeah, definitely, this is definitely... The Gunfighters is one of those stories. I wouldn't say it's a bad story. It's much better than its reputation is. But it's not a particularly great story.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay. But this DVD is well worth the price, because you get this story, but you also get this fabulous documentary, and I would say it's worth getting just for that documentary.
Doctor Who #1 is in the house. I think Donna is better than Stephen. What is your opinion?
Everybody has their own favourite.
Everyone has absolutely.
Companions. You know, if you asked me who my favourite companions were, I would say Zoe, Tegan, and Amy Pond. And if you say why, it's because they all look great in a leather miniskirt.
There you go.
Yeah.
Panton Frodo says, I heard it was William Hartnell's idea to do the Old West story.
They don't actually mention that in the documentary. They don't say that in the documentary.
But yes, I did enjoy the fact that he had a toothache and had to go and see a dentist.
That actually led him from the Celestial Toy Maker,
yeah,
because he's given a sweet and he eats the sweet at the end of the episode, and that does his tooth in. Okay, so now we're moving on. We've got a documentary on cosplayers now.
Well, this is it's not a documentary about cosplayers. All that is still to come. What we've done is we've taken short clips from the cosplayer interviews that we did during the 11th hour. And we asked each of them in turn what would they like to see in the 50th anniversary. And this is what they said.
Hi, we're at the Birmingham Hilton Metropole, and this is Starfury Convention's 11th hour, celebrating all the best about the 11th Doctor. And there's over 700 fans here with us this weekend with some fantastic costumes, so let's go and talk to them. So looking ahead to next year for the 50th anniversary, is there anything in particular you're hoping to see?
I don't really know. I mean, Steve's a massive Doctor Who fan, and I watched Doctor Who, but I don't really know what to expect. I mean, I'm sure they'll deliver something pretty spectacular like they always do. So
just some surprises and things like that.
Yeah, something to blow our minds.
So we're coming up to the 50th anniversary. So what would you like to see next year?
Can I say better writing? Somewhat better editing on the storylines, I think. I think we've got a lot of convoluted plot arcs going on at the moment, and the central themes have kind of been lost a little bit. I think a bit of a tighter show would be nice to see. Back in the Tennant era, we had some really slick storylines that would last an episode, and that was it. And that really kicked off with Eccleston, and it's kind of got... Matt Smith is an amazing Doctor, and I absolutely love... I'm a fan. I know a lot of people sort of sit there and go, well, it's changed a lot and I don't like it, but Matt Smith is an amazing Doctor, but I think he has really suffered from some convoluted writing and plot arcs at the moment.
Jenny and Vastra. I'd just like to see as many of the old companions back as possible. I don't know, forwards, backwards, sideways, every which direction, just see what Stephen Moffat can throw at us, really.
Yeah, we trust Moffat. He'll be timey-wimey. It'll all be good. As many Doctors as possible would be awesome.
It would be a dream if all the Doctors were there. And some of the classic companions. I love the classic show. So to have a reference to the past is always great. Something looking ahead, something now, something looking to the past. It's 50 years, so you've got to celebrate its past.
Well, I was always a big fan of sort of 10th and 20th anniversaries when they got them all together, but I also think that's maybe old Doctor Who now, and I think for the new Doctor Who, I think I'd be a little bit disappointed if they did end up getting everyone back together. I'd quite like to see them seeing some old companions being older now, so catching up with them. But generally, I think sort of the whole kind of crossover thing, I think, has been a little overdone. So I think just big and loud and explosions, and yeah, seeing some old companions and the way they caught up with Sarah Jane in David Tennant's Doctor Who. I think it'd be lovely to see something like that again and see him sort of stumble across some old companions. I'd like that.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. Look fantastic. Thank you.
So we do have much longer interviews with all those cosplayers coming soon to our channel, so please subscribe.
Yeah.
Lots of disagreement on what people would like to see in the 50th anniversary. Some say more Doctors, some say no more Doctors.
What I think is going to be interesting to see is when we say, I would be shocked, I would be absolutely shocked if there wasn't some sort of multi-Doctor story done during the 50th anniversary. What I think will be fascinating to do is how they approach it.
Yeah.
Would it be, say, a reunion of Doctors from just new Doctor Who?
Yes.
Or would they have classic Doctors turn up? And then you have an issue that David Tennant and Christopher Eccleston don't look any different to how they did in the show. But Tom Baker and Sylvester McCoy look nothing.
Stephen Moffat did address that, of course,
I know
with
that,
Time
but
Crash,
it's still,
which is still part of the continuity.
I know, but it's still a bit of a, so it'd be interesting to see what they would do there. And there's been a lot of conflicting rumours going around about Christopher Eccleston at the moment. So, because, he quite famously did not get on with certain people in the production crew when he was working on Doctor Who, hence his decision to leave the show.
But they're no longer there.
They're no longer working on the show. And it's now been, 6 years since he worked on the show.
Yeah.
So he may be in a position, because there's a rumour going around that he is coming back next season. That him and David Tennant will be making an appearance. But, that's one of those things that I wouldn't be surprised if it did happen, but I won't believe it until I actually see it.
Till someone has taken a picture of a set.
Yes.
I guess it's I'd hope the BBC would no outdoor shots with any of those
and it's also would be interesting to us, as I said, I would love to see Omega
But it'll
back.
be on the cover on the Radio Times, of course.
I would love to see Omega back.
And it would make sense
was
for
the 10th anniversary villain, the 20th anniversary villain. But I could really see it being the Doctor up against the Daleks and the Master.
Yeah.
Is what I would see them doing for the 50th. Very interesting. I'll just quickly wanted to
It did
address
take 3
this.
Doctors to take on Omega
It did.
the first time round.
It was very interesting. I think you saw this when I interviewed Matt Smith on stage for the 11th hour. He was asked at one point, who would you like to see play the Master? And he said John Sim.
Yes.
And the person asking him this said, but John Sim was the Master. And Matt Smith said, no, John Sim is the Master, and he is the Master until he decides he doesn't want to play it anymore. And when the Master returns, I would like to see it played by John Sim. And then this person pushed it further and said, well, who would you like to see play the Master if John Sim wasn't coming back? And quick as a flash, Matt Smith said straight away, Bill Nye.
Yes.
And then he paused a bit and he said, and I also could see Idris Ilbru playing the role. And I interjected at that point and said, what about Benedict Cumberbatch? There's been a lot of rumours about Benedict Cumberbatch playing the Master. And he looked at me and he looked quite puzzled at this and went, he's playing Sherlock. I went, yeah, but he could play, John Sim was on Life on Mars, Benedict Cumberbatch can do other things. And Matt Smith said, I'd rather just see him as Sherlock. And then when I go on Twitter afterwards, there is like 50,000 tweets going, Matt Smith demands Benedict Cumberbatch to play the Master.
And I
went on other websites, Bleeding. It was like that was the big news from my convention, that Matt Smith wants Benedict Cumberbatch to play the Master, when in fact he was quite adamant he wants to see John Sim back in the role.
I'd be surprised if Benedict Cumberbatch is the Master. I think it'd be too much. Although I'm sure he could do it very, very well.
I think the baggage from Sherlock would be too much.
Sherlock is too much, but there's no guarantee he would be able to come back as the Master.
Well,
again,
I would be very shocked that if they were having a new actor play the Master, they didn't have at least John Sim turn up for a handover to this new actor. But it was very funny when David Tennant left the show. Matt Smith, John Sim said, I'm never coming back as the Master. I was David Tennant's Master and I'm not coming back. And then a year later in interview, so no, I want to come back as the Master now. So I don't know whether it's he saw Matt Smith's work and went, oh, that's pretty good, or he wasn't getting enough acting work and could use another paycheck.
Absolutely. Hi, Sean and Elazar. Any chance of Barnaby Edwards and Nicholas Pegg being at midnight? That's from Blue Box 99.
Who knows?
Who
I'm
knows?
still working.
Yep.
Barnaby Edwards and Nicholas Pegg. Were they Dalek operators? I'm not too sure who they two were. I think they were Dalek operators.
Total Nerdy Bird says, my main memory is being terrified by the Marshmen and the Marsh Spiders.
Well, that was a great thing. The Marshmen did that classic kind of Hammer horror thing of the Marshmen rising out of the swamp.
That is actually one of those scenes that just stuck in my mind for years and years and years.
Unfortunately, once they were out the swamps and you saw them, I felt their costumes didn't. The faces worked.
Yeah.
But when their arms moved, you could suddenly see they were a rubber suit. But I felt the Marshmen, with that scene of them coming out of the marshes, if only they'd eaten Adric. But I thought they were a great monster, the Marsh Monsters. And there was a genuine sense of threat from them as well.
Doctor Who Confan says there is a rumour that Tom Baker has signed for an appearance in the 50th anniversary.
You want to know something?
I'm not quite sure I believe that rumour.
I would be surprised if Tom Baker wasn't involved in the 50th anniversary in some way. I could see him taking part in a documentary, doing something for BBC.
This is the thing, I think...
whether it's an appearance in Doctor Who, Matt Smith has already said he would love to see Tom Baker return to the show. But if they say he's signed up, it doesn't necessarily mean it on the show. I wouldn't be surprised if they do a big documentary on Doctor Who itself.
Yeah.
And who better to get to narrate it?
Indeed.
Tom Baker with
Absolutely.
that voice of his.
Absolutely.
He would be the perfect guy to have do that.
Cool. All right.
Well, I think that's it for this week.
It up. No more tweets in.
Yeah.
Nope.
So when we're going to be back?
Yes, they are Dalek operators.
Right.
Those two guys.
Right, now, so it looks like we will be back in August.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
In between then, in the next few
We're
weeks,
trying to entice Blog to Who to come on the show while he's in London.
We've got lots of interviews to be showing in the meantime.
Absolutely.
Coming up, Francis Barber one's coming up soon. On DVD coming out soon. Greatest Show in the Galaxy will be out in a few weeks, and The Planet of Giants.
The Planet of Giants, yes.
Yes.
I think that's one of the last VHSs I still have.
Yeah. But yeah, so those are some more stories, and I think what Greatest Show in the Galaxy that completes
the Seventh Doctor.
Seventh Doctor, and correct me if I'm wrong. Planet of Giants completes the completed William Hartnell stories. We still got the Reign of Terror
with the half animated,
which is half animated, and we also still have the episode they recently found of Galaxy 4. To release.
However, that will turn up, yes.
And there are lots of rumours of more animated ones coming along at the moment.
I mean, if they can bring that a cost within a reason, I suppose it's
well,
it's a possibility.
I would have thought it goes without saying that they would want to do some animation on 10th Planet.
It's only one episode.
And the Ice Warriors.
Yeah.
But there's a big rumour going on at the moment that we're going to see re-released with animated I always get them confused. Fury from the Deep was
Fury
a good
from
one.
the Deep, yeah.
It's Underwater they recently found Underwater Menace.
Underwater was the episode they found recently.
Underwater Menace, which is 2 episodes.
So they now have 2 episodes.
And
yes.
there's a rumour that's going to be animated, and there's a very strong rumour, especially since it's now just been revealed they've done new episode commentaries for it, that Moonbase is going to be animated as well.
Oh, fantastic.
They've made no official confirmation, just it's been revealed they've done new episode commentaries, and why else would they do new episode commentaries for it?
Indeed.
Okay, well that's up from me and Elazar. We'll be back in August.
Yep.
Lots still going on in Doctor Who, new series coming up soon. It's been a pleasure spending this hour with you all talking Who.
Talking Who, absolutely, and keep subscribed to the YouTube channel for further updates.
Yeah.
So long.